Music Today, Lesson 28. Playing scales is what many people think of as the most boring kind of keyboard exercise. But there's no getting round the fact that, like playing arpeggios, it really is one of the most effective ways of developing a first-rate keyboard technique. It also helps fix the different scales and their key signatures in your mind, which is essential if you're going to understand what you're playing and even make up music of your own. Anyway, we hope you'll find that when scales are presented in a whole variety of rhythms, as they are on pages 325 to 327 of your Lesson 28 booklet, they really aren't as boring as all that. In fact, you might find playing them is quite an interesting challenge. Let's take a look at the C major scale on page 325, concentrating especially on the fingering. You can see that to play a scale across 2 octaves, you have to use the thumb-under technique 3 times going up the keyboard and another 3 times coming down. There's a fixed pattern to how this works that applies to almost all scales, so it's well worth learning. In the right hand, on the way up the keyboard, you first pass your thumb under your 3rd finger, then under your 4th finger, and finally under your 3rd finger again. The pattern is the same on the way down. On the first occasion, the 3rd finger slides over the thumb, next time it's the 4th finger, and finally the 3rd finger again. The left-hand fingering is exactly the same, although of course reversed. The left hand going up the keyboard is like the right hand coming down. Now let's try version A, the C major scale as quavers in 2/4 time. You can play with the 2 hands separately or together. The left hand, as usual, plays an octave below, using the fingering beneath the notes. Version A. Version B has a dotted quaver and semiquaver rhythm. Now version C, semiquavers in 4/4 time. Version D is across 3 octaves. Notice the change from bass to treble clef and back. If your keyboard isn't long enough to play the left hand an octave lower, then try it at the same pitch as the right. Here's D. Version E is in 6/8 time, again across 3 octaves. F has a whole mixture of different rhythms spread over 2 octaves. Finally, G is in what's known as contrary motion. As you can see, the right and left hands start on the same note, but move in opposite directions. Obviously, the point of this exercise is lost if you don't play with the 2 hands together. Here's G. Now, the idea is that you should go on to try each of the major scales shown on pages 326 and 327 in turn, playing through all the different rhythmic versions as we've just done with the C major scale. But don't panic. This isn't something to be done all at once. Try out the different scales, one by one, from time to time, when you have 10 or 15 minutes to spare. There's no great rush. Playing scales should be just one of the types of keyboard practice that you come back to again and again, gradually improving your technique and your knowledge of music. Before we move on, there's one point to be made about the fingering in some of the scales. Not all of them start on the thumb or fifth finger, as C major does. In B major, the left hand begins with the fourth finger, and in scales that begin on a black key, the right hand starts with the second finger and the left hand with the third finger. This is to avoid the awkwardness of playing the black key with your thumb. But despite this different start, the rest of the fingering stays essentially the same as in C major, as you'll see when you try the scales for yourself. Our solo keyboard piece for this lesson is Beethoven's Minuet in G. It will need some careful practice, so try each hand slowly, paying special attention to the fingering before you put the two hands together and begin to work up towards the proper speed. Watch out for all the accidentals as well as the F-sharp key signature, and listen to the tape carefully to hear how the repeats work. In fact, each of the 4 sections of the music is played twice until you get to the words da capo al fine at the end of the second page, page 329. That takes you back to the start of the first full bar of the piece at the top of page 328, and you play through to the word fine, end, right at the beginning of the second page. When you play the first page for the second time, you ignore the repeats marked there, so you don't play the bar marked 2 at all the second time through. As usual, this is much more complicated to explain than it is to grasp in practice. So let's hear Beethoven's Minuet in G after 5 metronome beats, by the way. The usual 3 for a piece in 3/4 time, plus 2 for the missing 2 beats at the start of bar 1. Minuet in G. You've already run into quite a number of 7th chords, C7, G7, A7 and so on. For convenience, these were all given to you as 3-note chords at the time. This isn't actually wrong. Seventh chords do often appear in that form. But basically, a seventh chord has 4 notes, not 3, as you can see on pages 330 and 331. A seventh chord is constructed by adding another note on top of one of the normal major or minor chords in its root position. The interval between the root note and the new top note is either a major or a minor seventh. C to B, or D to C sharp, are major sevenths, for instance, while C to B flat, or D to C, are minor sevenths. At the bottom of page 330, you can see the seventh chords that we get on the first 6 degrees of the C major scale. On the first and fourth degrees, there are major seventh chords, C major 7 and F major 7. If you read the booklet carefully and look at the diagrams, you'll see how a major seventh chord is put together. On the second, third and sixth degrees of the scale, there are minor seventh chords, D minor 7, E minor 7 and A minor 7. The way these are made up is explained at the top of page 332. As well as these major and minor seventh chords, there's a sort of hybrid, the dominant seventh chord, which, as its name suggests, occurs on the 5th degree of the scale, the dominant. As we explain on page 332, the dominant seventh, in this case G7, has a minor seventh on top of a major chord. So it's neither major nor minor, but something in between. Well, this is all rather a lot to take in, but read slowly through pages 330 to 332. And then play for yourself the seventh chords at the top of page 333. You'll notice that because the seventh chord has 4 notes, it also has 4 positions. The root position, first inversion, second inversion, and third inversion. When you've played through the 4 positions of the chords, you'll be ready to move on to the chord sequences, exercises 304 to 307. Exercise 304, for the right hand, has the sequence C major 7, A minor 7, D minor 7, G7, the dominant seventh, and back to C major 7 again. Exercise 305 is exactly the same, but for the left hand. Exercise 306, for the right hand once more, has the sequence D minor 7, G7, C major 7, A minor 7, and back to C major 7 again. And the same sequence for the left hand, exercise 307. Handel with Care is our piece with backing group for this lesson. It's a lively and distinctly modern interpretation of Handel's style. There's no denying that it's quite tricky in places. The semiquavers are fairly fast at full speed, and your fingers will need to be pretty nimble to manage all the notes accurately. But as long as you practice in the way you've been taught, you'll get there in the end. Above all, remember to play the two hands separately and slowly at first, taking the utmost care over the fingering. When you practice the difficult semiquavers in the right hand enough times, slowly and accurately with the correct fingering, you'll probably be astonished how well you can play them when you finally increase speed. If you look at bar 10 of the keyboard part, at the end of line 3 on the first page, you'll see that you play a D staccato with the fourth finger of your right hand, followed by the same D legato with the second finger. This jump from the fourth to the second finger on the same note crops up a couple of other times in this piece, and it's worth practicing on its own for a few minutes now and then. Also, notice that the piece starts in G major with an F-sharp key signature, but changes to E major with 4 sharps, F, C, G and D, at the beginning of the last page. So now let's hear Handel with care, with keyboard and backing. The keyboard comes in after 4 bars of introduction. And now here's the same piece without the keyboard part. Remember to count the 4 bars before you come in. And don't try to play along with the backing until you've practiced the piece thoroughly. It will take time before you can manage it accurately at this speed.